Hello and welcome to this virtual theater talk for the reading of Home by Sam Art Williams, part of the Refocus Project at the Roundabout Theater Company. My name is Devin E. Hawk, and I'm a teaching artist with the Roundabout's education program, education department. And I am coming to you from the traditional lands of the Lenape people.
The Lenape people. Me too, Dev. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Hi, everyone. I'm Nafisa Monroe. I'm also a teaching artist with the education department of the Roundabout Theater Company. Super excited to be here to talk to you about Home and the Refocus Project. Just really quickly, the Refocus Project is a project that Roundabout Theater Company has created to help shine a light on artists and plays and playwrights from communities that have been traditionally marginalized and given less than their due. I forget, Devin, am I starting?
Yeah, you're going to start out. I would love it if you would start out by telling us a little bit about Sam Art Williams, his life and his career, because I know you have a personal connection with him. And I just think it would be really good to hear from you and your perspective as someone who's actually had really personal interactions with him.
Oh, thank you. Okay, yeah. So how it began was many, many moons ago when I was a young actress in Los Angeles. I got a job behind the scenes on The Martin Show. And one of the executive producers of the show at the time was this very tall man. He's like 6'4", something like that. Very, very tall, big man named Sam Art Williams. He is the kindest, nicest, funniest, awesome man that I've known in my life. And but I thought he was primarily a television writer, which he was at the time. Then I came to find a book at a used bookstore called In the Shadow of the Great White Way, which is actually a photographic history of Black American theater. And it focused mostly on the Black arts movement or Black theater movement, depending on which scholar you're reading. And I had all these beautiful photographs of Black artists doing incredible plays. And I look back at the index and there's this man named Sam Art Williams. I think I went to work the next day going, "You didn't tell me you were a playwright?" And I don't remember what his response was, but it was kind of like, you should have done your homework. And but what was incredible was that I studied Black American theater in college, and I did not know who this man was. And it just kind of rang a bell for me that was like, there's so much that I don't know because we're not talking about it. Like maybe the plays got lost and not included in the canon of classics and things like that. And anyways, so it's been a joy to kind of research this old friend of mine for this project, and to know that Roundabout Theater Company, one of my homes in New York, is doing this play written by this man who helped me feel at home in LA. And, just so I love that. So Sam Art Williams, he was born in North Carolina, and he still has very much North Carolina in him. Still very Southern, still very gentleman. It's awesome. And his mom was an English teacher and a drama director. So not only did she cast him in shows that she directed when he was young, but she also really encouraged him to write plays. And being an English teacher, she also made sure that he read everything, right? He had to read Edgar Allan Poe. He had to read Langston Hughes. He read everything. So he's got this breadth of knowledge that he's gathering as a young person. But when he went to undergraduate school at Morgan State College in Baltimore, he actually was there studying political science because he wanted to be a civil rights lawyer. But of course, as many of us know, once you got that bug, that theater little, that bite, sometimes it's really hard to get rid of it. And was Sam Art Williams. He still wanted to go into the theater. So when he moved to Philadelphia first, and he joined the Freedom Theater there, and he acted a little bit as well. And then in 1974, he moved to New York City and became a part of the NEC Playwrights Company. Home was written in 1979. And if we look at the historical kind of arc of the Black theater movement, or Black American theater really, as a whole, where he's coming out of what was the Black theater movement, which was a very revolutionary theater movement. It reinforced W.E.B. Du Bois's call to theater artists, Black theater artists, which was, it needs to be written for us, by us, and about us, right? So focused on a Black audience, Black characters, Black playwrights. And that was kind of reinforced and reinvigorated to an even more revolutionary theater in the 60s and 70s, like Amiri Baraka was a big proponent of that. But Sam here is writing in the late 70s, and he's starting to really say, yes, we need that. And as Black writers, we also have to acknowledge we can write about other things. Like, we don't have to only write about Black people. And I love this quote that he said that from an interview that says, I believe that Black writers are going to have to become objective and realize that we do not have to write about just Black situations. We don't want to isolate ourselves. I'm sure 90% of my plays I'm going to write will be Black plays because of my experience. I'm a Black man. But if the urge hits me and I think I can write an objective play about anybody else, any other ethnic group in this world, I'll do it. And it won't be garbage. It'll come from somewhere. And I just think that was so important in right? Like just so important in the growth of the movement and the splash that this play made. Like when I read about the splash that this play made on Broadway, I'm always surprised how many people don't know about it, because
right yeah, like the fact that this isn't like a play that is talked about all the time, that is done all the time. When you consider the history of the production, the original production, it's remarkable.
Absolutely. So do you want to tell us, because this was kind of developed and produced first at the Negro Ensemble Company, can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, absolutely. So the Negro Ensemble Company, or the NEC as it is known by many, it was a pioneering theater company and a home for many performers and playwrights who hadn't previously had many outlets for their work. And it helped to launch the careers of stars like Sherman Hemsley, who also worked with Sam Art Williams on the Amen series.
Amen.
Right? Felicia Rashad, Angela Bassett, Keith David, Danny Glover, Giancarlo Esposito, as well as Lawrence Fishburne, Samuel L. Jackson, and Denzel Washington, and many, many others. So many of the household names when it comes to African-American artists and performers who we know from film and television now got their start at the NEC, and the NEC is really responsible for helping to launch their careers. The company's beginnings can be traced directly back to 1959 and the success of Lorraine Hansberry's A Raisin in the Sun. So because that play was such a hit, suddenly Black actors who had grown accustomed to being the minority in predominantly white casts, often relegated to the servant roles, now found themselves being able to work together on really great parts. And I think just the mere fact of them being on stage together brought about change. So the story goes that Douglas Turner Ward and Robert Hooks were performing in Raisin's touring company when they decided that Raisin shouldn't be a one-time phenomenon. So then in 1966, these two men added theater manager Gerald Crone to their team, who wasn't Black, by the way. He was a white man, and the two of them came together to form a plan to create a permanent home in which Black theater artists could oversee, control, and promote their own artistic destinies. And they actually got a lot of grief for having Mr. Crone join their team, but I will say that it was Gerald Crone who brought the organizational expertise to the table that allowed them as a company to reach the heights that they were able to reach. So it was a great choice. He was a great collaborator, and we honor his memory because he did actually pass away last year. Actually, during the run of A Soldier's Play on Broadway.
Did he get to see the show? I don't remember.
No, I don't think so. I know I might be wrong about that. I don't know for sure. But I know there was an article that came out during the run of the show that really did shine a light on him and his career. Yeah. So around
how important those admin. I was going to say sometimes people don't know how important the structural importance of running a theater company. Like that's just such an expertise, and it's so important. Sorry,
it's
please.
The business. They call it show business. I mean, we love to make art. Art is great, but you have to have the organizational foundation in order for your art to reach people, in order for you to generate revenue so that you can continue to make art. So
Yeah.
that's what the Negro Ensemble was able to do.
Mm.
Also, back in 1966, around the same time, Douglas Turner Ward
Mm.
wrote a very provocative article in the New York Times entitled "American Theater for Whites Only?" question mark. And
Woo!
this manifesto attracted the attention of the Ford Foundation, which
Oh,
awarded Douglas Turner Ward a grant to formally establish the Negro Ensemble Company in 1967. So, talking about money, it was this Ford Foundation grant, which was millions of dollars, that really helped them kind of like kick off this theater company. They started out performing on St. Mark's Place before moving to Hell's Kitchen.
mm,
And over the subsequent years, the NEC produced more than 200 shows on and off Broadway and won a slate of Tonys, Obies, and Pulitzers.
wow.
Currently, the company is producing more sporadically, but they are still in business, and they have not had a permanent space since after the mid 90s. I also want to mention that Douglas Turner Ward recently also passed away. He was an influential and important part of the Black arts movement and a driving force behind the great success of the Negro Ensemble Company.
I just think of like when we talk about the NEC and we're talking about Sam Art Williams in the 70s and New York in the 70s, 80s, I just think about all of the history that was happening, right? We've got the Vietnam vets coming home, we've got PTSD, we've got poverty, we're coming out of the civil rights movement, we've lost Malcolm X, we've lost Martin Luther King Jr., both to assassinations, we've got protests, riots.
Not just those two. I mean, many of the influential civil rights leaders, Black and white, but particularly from the Black community, had been either killed, imprisoned, or exiled at that time.
Yeah. And then what I don't know what drugs were happening in I mean, I feel like in my brain, at least, you know, I feel like the PTSD led to a drug epidemic, but you know, they probably were happening at the same time, right?
Yeah, I mean, you know, heroin had already been rampant in the inner cities, especially in the Black community. These soldiers, often, many of them were coming back not only with PTSD and mental health issues, but also stricken by, you know, heroin addiction and drug addiction. So then you already had this epidemic of heroin, and then this extreme poverty that started to run rampant throughout all the major cities. And then the crack cocaine epidemic came into play in the 80s. So it was just like this perfect storm of all these like really terrible things.
Yeah. And the artists are still creating, right? They're finding a way for their voice to be heard and for them to write stories that matter, that will touch people. And I think one of the beautiful things about the play Home is that it's really kind of examining what happens to a young person who's not from there, right? So the lead character is from the South and moves to the big city, and what happens when you're kind of new to this. Should I talk a little bit about the production history?
Yeah, tell us a little bit about the original production. We talked about
Yeah.
how successful it was. Let's get more specific.
So in 1979, it opened in off-Broadway. It was a production of the NEC, just to be really clear. And it opened off-Broadway, played for 82 performances, and it did so well that it got picked up to Broadway and opened on Broadway in 1980, and it played for 279 performances.
Wow.
I have not done the actual math, but in my brain, that's about an 8-month run if they're doing 8 shows a week. It was nominated for a Tony. It won the John Gassner Playwriting Medallion for Most Provocative New Play by an American. And it also won the Audience Development Committee Award for Best Play in 1980. And one of the things that they talked about a lot in the reviews is how poetic the language was. It's and what that brings to mind for me is not only, you know, Sam Art, even in his interviews, talks about reading Langston Hughes and Edgar Allan Poe. And like, so you hear about kind of those poetic influences, but also we have this poetic influence from the Black arts movement when there was the Black theater movement, from the 60s into the 70s, when there was really kind of this Black experimentation where we were really looking at how do we bring our African diaspora-ness to our Black Americanness and put that on stage? And what does that mean to put that on stage? And I
Yeah,
feel
and I
like
would also just add too, the Negro Ensemble Company, ensemble really was a key word in that
absolutely
title, and a lot of their plays, like much like a soldier's play, but also this one, as you say, three actors, and the women are playing all these other different roles. So they really also pioneered this idea of ensemble storytelling, which is so vogue now. You have companies like Fiasco who are sort of bringing that type of storytelling back to life and making it popular again. But the Negro Ensemble Company was doing that back in the day to great
right.
success.
Absolutely. And that so many of the people who were a part of the Negro Ensemble Company were playwrights, actors, like they didn't just, there weren't so many that only did one thing. They did many things. They participated in the teamwork and the community of what it was to be in the theater, which I think is so important. Devin, do you want to tell us a little bit about the reading we're about to watch?
Yes, the Refocus reading of Home. We don't know who is cast as of yet. We do know that Kenny Leon is directing this reading of Home.
Okay.
Kenny Leon is no stranger to New York audiences and Broadway. He recently directed Roundabout Theater Company's Broadway debut production of A Soldier's Play, which is another seminal NEC original play. And he was nominated for a Tony Award for direction of that production. He has directed American Son on Broadway, Children of a Lesser God, Holler If You Hear Me, the Tupac musical, A Raisin in the Sun twice on Broadway. He directed Stick Fly on Broadway, The Mountaintop, Fences, Radio Golf, Gem of the Ocean.
Just one or two then.
Whenever there's going to be a Black play done on Broadway, I think Kenny Leon gets the first call. He really made a name for himself as a go-to Broadway director. Last summer, Kenny's production of Shakespeare's Much Ado About Nothing at the Delacorte Theater in Central Park with an all-Black cast was extremely popular. That production was filmed and played on PBS as part of their Great Performances series. And now we're really lucky to have Kenny Leon as a part of our Roundabout family as a resident director. And so we are extremely excited and very happy that he will be spearheading this reading of Home.
Thank you again. We look forward to hopefully seeing you live and in person soon. But in the meantime, we'll see you right here on your home computer.
Thank you so much for joining us, and enjoy the reading.